to go to a specific place in your mind for a second. It's a moment I think every single person listening has experienced, and honestly, it might be one of the most frustrating feelings in the modern world. You're sitting in a room, maybe it's a terrifyingly quiet exam hall, or, maybe it's a high-stakes boardroom meeting. The pressure is on.
Right.
You look at the paper in front of you or the expectant faces of your colleagues, and you reach into your brain for the answer.
And you find absolutely nothing.
Nothing, just static. But here's the worst part, the part that really twists the knife.
Oh, yeah.
You know that you know this. You can vividly remember sitting at your desk, 24 hours ago. You had your coffee, your highlighters, the lighting was perfect, you were reading the material, and you felt like a total genius. You were nodding along thinking, yes, obviously, I own this topic.
And then reality hits.
Exactly. The disconnect between that feeling of absolute mastery while studying and the absolute void during the test is just, it's baffling. You sit there thinking, did I hallucinate learning this?
In a way, yes. You did. You experienced what we call the study session hallucination.
Okay.
It's a very specific psychological phenomenon, and it is the subject of today's deep dive. We're exploring a fascinating and, frankly, slightly disturbing piece of writing. It's titled, Why Feeling Smart While Studying is Dangerous.
The title alone is a bit of a provocation, right? Because my entire life, I've operated on the assumption that if I feel smart, I am smart.
Of course.
If I feel like I'm learning, I'm learning.
That is the assumption we're here to dismantle. The mission today is to look at why our brains actively lie to us about our own competence. We're going to uncover why that feeling of smoothness, or ease when you're reading a textbook is actually a warning flare.
Whoa.
A sign that you probably aren't learning much at all.
It's completely backward. I mean, in almost every other domain of human existence, ease is a good thing. If I'm driving my car and it feels smooth and effortless, that means I'm a good driver. If I'm walking down the street and I'm not stumbling, I've mastered walking. We are trained to equate ease with skill. So why on earth is learning the exception?
That is the core question. To understand it, we have to look at what the source calls the intuitive trap.
The intuitive trap?
Yeah. The source material argues that we're conditioned from early childhood to believe that understanding an explanation is the same thing as acquiring knowledge. Think about the classroom dynamic.
Okay, I'm back in 5th grade.
You're in 5th grade.
Yeah.
The teacher is up at the board explaining, long division. You're listening. The logic flows step by step.
Right.
You nod. You think, okay, that follows. I get that.
Sure.
Because the teacher's logic is clear and you are following it without confusion, your brain creates a signal. It says, we understand this.
And we confuse understanding the teacher with understanding the material.
Precisely. We conflate the clarity of the presentation with the durability of our own memory. This is what psychologists call the fluency illusion.
The fluency illusion.
Fluency is simply a measure of how easily information moves through your mind. When thoughts flow quickly, when sentences connect logically, your brain reports that sensation as competence. It's a shortcut.
Oh.
The brain says, hey, we are processing this really fast, so we must be experts at it.
So because I'm not struggling to read the sentence, my brain just assumes I've memorized the concept inside the sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And going back to your driving analogy, that's where the trap gets really sticky. The source points out that in physical tasks or familiar routines, ease does signal mastery.
Right.
When you drive a familiar route to work, you don't have to think. You're on autopilot. That ease is the result of a habit that has already been built.
But studying isn't a habit.
Studying is the act of building the habit. It's the construction phase, not the performance phase. And if you confuse the two, you run into trouble. If the construction phase feels like the performance phase, if it feels effortless, you probably aren't building anything. You're just watching the materials go by.
That distinction is huge. We are applying the metrics of performance to the act of acquisition.
Yes.
And I think this leads to the biggest pitfall the source talks about, confusing familiarity with retention.
This is the #1 enemy of the student.
It's that feeling when you look at your notes from yesterday, you scan the page, you see the bullet points, and your brain just goes, yep, I know that. Seen it.
And you get a little hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
It feels good to recognize things. But the source makes a critical distinction here. Familiarity is not retention. Just because you recognize something doesn't mean you know it.
Okay, let's drill down into this because I think I probably use those words interchangeably. What is actually happening in the brain when we recognize something versus when we actually know it?
We have to look at the difference between recognition and recall. These are two totally different biological processes.
Okay.
The brain is, well, first and foremost, it's an efficiency machine. It wants to save energy, and recognition is a very low-energy task.
It's the path of least resistance.
It is. When you reread your notes, the information is right there in front of you. It is present. Your brain takes that visual input, matches it against the memory of seeing it yesterday, and says match found. It's just pattern validation.
So it requires almost no neural effort?
Almost none. It's like seeing a guy at a party and say, hey, I know that guy.
I know that face.
Exactly. That's recognition. But recall. Recall is a different beast. Recall is the guy isn't at the party. You are alone in a room with a sketch pad. Can you draw his face from memory?
Oh, that is infinitely harder.
It's harder because the stimulus is absent. You have to reconstruct the neural pattern from scratch. You have to go into your mental warehouse, find the file, and pull it up without any external clues.
Yeah.
That is high-energy work.
And the tragedy is that almost every test, every presentation, every high-pressure situation in life requires recall. But we study using recognition.
That is the presence problem.
Right.
We rely on the presence of the material to trigger the feeling of knowing. The source puts it beautifully. It says, familiarity feels like ownership.
Familiarity feels like ownership.
Yeah. When you are looking at the book, you feel like you own that information. But you don't. You are just renting it from the page.
You're renting it from the page. I like that. And as soon as you close the book, the lease is up.
And you don't realize the lease is up until it's too late. This brings us to the issue of feedback loops. In most things, feedback is immediate.
Right. Touch a hot stove, you know instantly.
Exactly. But learning has a delayed feedback loop.
The test is in the future.
The test is weeks away. Your brain cannot simulate that future reality. It can only judge how you feel right now. And right now, sitting in your chair with your highlighter, you feel great. You feel smooth. So the brain looks at that smoothness thermometer and says, forecast looks good.
It's using a present tense feeling to predict a future tense ability, and it's almost always wrong.
It is. And that explains the emotional crash you described in the intro. The source discusses this feeling of betrayal. When you blank out on a test, you don't just feel confused, you feel tricked.
You feel like your brain lied to you. It feels personal. You think, but I studied. I put in the hours.
And that leads to the darker side of this. When the information vanishes, we rarely blame the method. We don't say, oh, I fell for the fluency illusion. We blame the hardware. We say, I have a bad memory.
I have absolutely said I have a sieve for a brain.
We all have. But most people do not have a bad memory. They have a misunderstood filter. The source material suggests we need a fundamental mental model shift here. We tend to view learning as an input system, like a bucket. If I pour clear, water-good information into the bucket, it should stay there. If it leaks, there's a hole in my bucket.
That seems logical. Input equals storage.
But the brain is not a bucket. It's a filtering system. And this is the radical truth the source presents. Forgetting is not a failure of the brain. Forgetting is the default setting of the brain.
Wait, hold on. The default is to forget.
Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. Think about the sheer volume of data hitting your senses right now. The hum of the air conditioner, the pattern on the wall, the specific shade of my shirt. If you retained 100% of that data, your system would crash.
Right.
You couldn't function. The brain is designed to aggressively discard 99.9% of your experience.
It's a spam filter on steroids.
Exactly. It filters out the noise so you can focus on the signal. So retention is actually the exception. It only happens when specific high-threshold conditions are met. And this brings us to the most powerful metaphor in the source material, the gate.
I love this visual. It really helped me wrap my head around why easy is bad. Walk us through the gate model.
Okay, so imagine a gate in your mind. Information is constantly flowing towards it like a stream of water. Now go back to that good study session. You're relaxed, the material's clear, you're nodding along.
Yeah.
In that state, the gate is wide open.
Okay, the gate is open.
The water flows through pleasantly. It's a smooth ride.
Yeah.
But because the gate is open, the water flows right through and exits the other side. It leaves no trace. It doesn't get caught.
So the feeling of ease, that flow state, is literally the feeling of information passing through you without sticking.
In the context of learning, yes. Ease means no resistance.
Bro.
But to learn, to retain, you need to create a dam. You need the gate to close.
And what happens when the gate closes?
The information crashes into it. It piles up. The pressure builds. You have to push against it. That struggle, that feeling of, oh, why can't I remember this definition? Or, wait, how did these two ideas connect?
Yeah, that horrible feeling.
That is the water hitting the closed gate. That pressure is the signal to the brain that says, hey, this is important. We need to stabilize this trace.
This is the paradox of effort.
It is. When studying feels smooth, the brain is expending minimal energy. It creates a faint, ghostly trace that just vanishes. When studying feels clunky and slow and frustrating, the brain is being forced to do heavy lifting.
It's working.
It's engaging in elaborative processing. That high-energy expenditure signals the hippocampus to prioritize this data.
The source used the phrase, memory is costly. That really stuck with me. We want memory to be cheap. We want it to be free.
But biologically, it isn't. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
If you don't pay the cost in attentional effort and cognitive strain, you don't get the storage.
This has massive implications for how we view ourselves. Because if we don't understand this mechanism, if we think ease equals smart and struggle equals stupid, we end up in a really damaging psychological cycle.
Exactly. The source calls it the avoidance trap. It's a defense mechanism. If you believe that smart people just get it instantly, then the moment you hit friction, you interpret that as evidence of your own inadequacy.
I'm struggling, therefore I'm failing.
And so you stop doing the thing that causes the struggle. You retreat to safety. You stop testing yourself. You put away the flashcards. Why? Because those things make you feel dumb.
They expose the gaps.
They expose the gaps. They make the gate close, and that feels bad.
So we go back to the highlighter.
We go back to passive review. We reread the textbook. We listen to the lecture at 2x speed. These activities are the junk food of learning. They feel satisfying in the moment. They alleviate your anxiety because they're easy. You can sit in the library for 4 hours highlighting, feel like a conscientious student, and learn absolutely nothing.
It's productive procrastination. You're soothing your ego rather than building your mind.
That's the tragedy. We are working hard at the wrong thing to protect our self-image. We prioritize feeling smart now over actually being prepared later.
So, okay, let's pivot. We've diagnosed the problem. We know the fluency illusion is lying to us. We know the gate needs to be closed. For the listener right now, how do they break this cycle?
The first step is an attitude adjustment. You have to accept that the signal is inverted. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. If you are reading a chapter and you catch yourself skimming, nodding, and feeling like, I got this, you need to trigger a red alert.
That ease is the danger zone.
It is. You have to manually close the gate. Stop reading. Cover the page. Look at the wall and ask yourself, what is the core argument I just read? How would I explain this to a 5-year-old?
And when you can't answer, because usually, let's be honest, you can't.
When you can't and you feel that little spike of panic or frustration, don't spiral. Reframe it immediately. Think, good, this struggle is the learning. That specific feeling of grasping for the answer, of mentally sweating, that is the feeling of the memory cementing itself.
It really shifts the blame from the person to the process. You weren't broken, you were just misinterpreting the dashboard.
Right, it's a system mismatch. Your brain is working exactly as designed. It filters out low-effort input to save space. You just have to trick it into thinking this input is worth keeping by artificially increasing the effort.
So we need to introduce desirable difficulty.
That's a technical term, yes.
Yes.
You want difficulty. If you were in a meeting and you don't understand the strategy, the instinct is to nod and smile so you look competent. The gate theory says do the opposite. Stop the flow. Grapple with it right there. Ask the question that forces you to rephrase it. It feels awkward, but that's how it sticks.
It's funny, we spend so much of our lives trying to remove friction, but learning is the one place where we need to deliberately add the friction back in.
Friction is the mechanism. Without friction, there is no traction. If the wheels are just spinning freely, the car doesn't move. You need the tires to grip the road. Struggle is the grip.
I think this is going to be a huge relief for a lot of people. It turns feeling stupid into a strategy.
It validates the effort and it makes the hard work feel meaningful rather than discouraging.
So to bring this all home, the mental model to keep in your pocket is the gate.
The gate, remember, subjective experience, how you feel right now, is not a predictor of retention. In fact, it's often an inverse predictor. If the water is flowing smooth, nothing is being caught.
You have to close the gate. So here is the final thought I want to leave you with, and it's something to really mull over next time you open a book. The source ends with this really provocative idea. We go through life terrified of that feeling of being slow or stuck. We think it exposes us as frauds. But if we flip the script, if feeling smart is actually a danger signal, then feeling slow or feeling like you are grinding your gears that might just be the most intelligent thing you can feel.
Wow.
That struggle isn't a sign that you are failing. That struggle is the actual feeling of learning happening in real time.
It's the sound of the work getting done.
Exactly. So go out there, open your books, and embrace the struggle. Don't be afraid to feel a little bit stupid in the service of getting smarter. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.